Hello and welcome back to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blain. During this final segment, we'll talk a little bit about some pieces of advice that I hear from time to time, especially young people don't get a lot of good source of advice. And these are some things that I hear that are kind of disturbing sometimes to me that I thought I'd pass along, whether young or old, it doesn't matter. These are good pieces of advice that I'm not sure we don't do a real good job in our schools of educating people and you know how to be an adult and handle finances and things like that. And one that I hear is that's kind of disturbing a lot of times, especially today, is don't stay in a job that you don't like. You know, that find a job that you love. And I do believe that people need to find something that they're passionate about, but I think it discourages young people. I talk to a lot of young people and they're looking for that perfect job, you know, that first job. Oh, I got to find a job that I love. And, you know, they get in a job, they don't like it, and they leave. And there's every job out there, there's going to be certain elements that you're going to find distasteful and that are not exactly what you imagine. But instead of, you know, just flitting from job to job, be willing to take promising jobs and endure through them for a little bit. Get through that period of, you know, the sort of the honeymoon and then the lull to try to figure out what is good about that job. You know, what made you take that job in the first place? Sort of rediscover it. Is there something else about the job that you can do that would enhance, you know, your liking the job? But I just see a lot of people today, they get focused on that. You know, do what you love, and if you can't find the perfect job that you love, well, don't do anything, which of course is bad for your finances. You know, there's a saying out there that I didn't make it, but you can't steer a parked car. And I think it's a great example. Is if you're parked, you know, and you're steering, you're not actually moving anywhere. But if you're moving in a direction, you can always steer. You can take a U-turn, you can take a right turn, you can make a left turn, but you're moving in some direction. And that's generally with a career. The second thing that I hear a lot of times is a house is a good investment. Rent is just throwing your money away. And this is one of the, I think, has been promoted by the realtor industry, that everybody needs to go out there and buy a home. Of course, the governments have also done their fair share of promoting the home as an investment. And I'm not disputing the fact that home ownership can be a great thing. Home ownership helps build communities. You know, people take pride in their homes and things like that. But the fact that there's nothing wrong with renting. In fact, we have some clients that are extremely wealthy that have never owned a home. Now, for those of you listening on the internet, you know, you could be anywhere in the United States. Here, where we live in North Carolina, there's a lot of, you know, it's kind of suburbia. People get around by car, things like that. Housing is relatively affordable. You go into New York City, maybe Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Chicago, places like that. There are people that never in their lives own a home that are able to accumulate, you know, great wealth. So the notion that just renting is throwing your money away is just flat wrong. On the flip side of things, the buying a home is not a sure thing, and I love doing this. The primary residence is not an investment. It is a place to live. And you have to compare the cost of home ownership versus renting. And a lot of people look at, well, my home's going to appreciate in value. And my question is, well, is it? You know, is it really? If you look historically, nationwide, the price of housing appreciates at the rate of inflation. And you know, if you think your house is going to go up 10, 12% a year indefinitely, you know, it's not. You may get lucky. It may go up when you buy it, and you may be able to make a profit on it, but the house is something that it's not an investment. An investment to me is something that you put money into with a reasonable expectation of some sort of cash flow return. You know, a house is not. You put money into it every month. You make a mortgage payment, you make tax payments, you make insurance payments, repair, maintenance, utilities, things like that. That is not an investment. It's a place to live. And so the notion that just by putting your money in a house that it's going to go up in value. So a lot of times we'll look at, had an elderly lady the other day, she bought her home with her husband back in the 1950s. 1950s, she owned the thing for 50, 60 years. And, we asked, well, what'd you pay for it? We did an estimate of repairs. We did all this sort of estimating. It's very difficult to figure out what she spent on it for 60 years, but we did a pretty rough estimate. If anything, it was conservative and minimized the amount that she spent on it. This was in, well, I'll let you know, it was in Buckhead in Atlanta. One of the fast-growing, expensive, her house was worth, several $1 million. Well, when we did the rate of return, it turned out that she made like 4.2% on it. If she had invested in a good diversified portfolio since that time, she would have had, a ton more money than an investment. Nothing wrong with it. She enjoyed living there. She raised children there. She had grandchildren there. Nothing wrong with having a house. But I do not like to hear people talk about a home. It's the best investment you can make. That's a realtor thing. There's nothing wrong with renting. You just need to make sure that you have a strategy, whether you're buying a home or renting, that you have a plan. If you're renting and you're planning to save money by not owning a home, well, you better be investing that money and not just spending it on consumption items. Kind of a corollary to this, the other piece of bad advice I hear all the time is paying off your mortgage early. Now, I'm all for people getting out of debt. There's nothing wrong with being out of debt, but this blanket statement that you should pay your mortgage off early is just malpractice. A long-term mortgage, you want to talk about the purest inflation hedge available, is a long-term mortgage. People talk about gold and real estate and TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, as a hedge against inflation. There is no the perfect hedge against inflation is to borrow money on a long-term basis. If you have a 30-year mortgage, that's the best inflation protection that you can have just about. And so if you have money in the bank to pay your mortgage off and you keep that money invested, earning after tax a higher rate of return, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, as people get close to retirement, they get a little stressed over their mortgage. Okay, fine, maybe we'll talk about paying it off. But just the blanket advice, it's not a one-size-fits-all piece of advice. Well, that's about all the time we have today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week.
The proceeding was a paid program. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of WNBU and Inner Banks Media.